Hi everyone, I'm Mack, and welcome to another episode and a very special episode of the Golden Rule Revolution, where inspiration and purpose come from treating people like people and nothing less. And I will tell you, it is so important right now that we are treating human beings, as people, as minds, hearts, souls, bodies, spirits that are just craving for comfort right now, that are craving to be loved, that are craving to be known, that are craving to be held and told it's going to be okay. And that is why I am so excited to bring my guests today. I want to introduce them. First, we have Lynn. She is the queen maker. She is a coach. I've had her on the podcast before. You may remember her. In fact, when I had her on the podcast, listening to her, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want this person to be a coach in my life. And working with her, I get a little emotional. Working with her was a powerful experience and helped me navigate through massive transitions in my life, from facing the trauma, healing trauma, and then stepping into the power and calling that I felt called to step into. And so she's incredible, and I'm honored to have her on, as well as her powerful, there's the nod to we're joking around. I'm shortening his title by Sanyika, the Firestarter Street. This man is a force. This man is a leader. This man is a son. This man is an illuminator, and I am honored to have them both join me on this podcast. And everyone listening around the world, this is a time for you to get grounded on earth. This is a time for you to be planted firmly into the ground, to know that you are in your body safe, you're in your body empowered, you're in your body in love. And my guests today are going to show and talk about how to best do that. So guys, thank you so much. Hello. Thanks for joining the Golden Rule Revolution.
Thank you for that intro. I got emotional. I was like, oh, God, I'm going to be over here crying.
Oh, man.
Thank you for that. We're so grateful to be here with you and during this time. And yeah, I've been chatting with a few different people, and I said, we were built for this. We were made for this.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm excited to be here too. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff that we can get into, but I think it's really, really beautiful that you started about just speaking into the idea that you are safe.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of places to go around that, but it was interesting because I was having a conversation with my mother yesterday. She called me and she said, "How are you doing?" And she had concern in her voice, and I was sitting on the couch, and I this is exactly what I said to her. I was like, "Well, I'm sitting on the couch. I'm looking out the patio. The sun is shining.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear the next door neighbor's lawnmower going off. And basically, my external environment is exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So my external environment is exactly the same. However, I do feel a bit of anxiety. And I was like, where do I feel that anxiety from? I feel that anxiety because I'm feeling the anxiety of the collective consciousness in terms of the collective awareness of what people are navigating through at this present moment in time. Dr. Joe Dispenza, he has this, he says, human beings are the only animals that can go into 100% anxiety, stress response, and shutdown without being in physical danger. Right?
That's interesting. Yeah.
So it's like my environment is the same. However, I can still go and shut down by the perceived threat of fear.
Yeah.
That perceived threat of fear is a representation of the anxiety that I feel like is happening around the universe. So
it's a wild time. It's a wild time. And yet I was talking to a friend yesterday. This is the time for people for those, before this, people that had experienced trauma and adversity in their life through whatever avenues those may have taken place, I think we're kind of a step behind the people who didn't ever experience massive trauma and just things were given to them and they inherited what they inherited, and they didn't really have to face their greatest fears. And all of a sudden, the people that have done serious trauma work and gone through and stared down the beast and looked it in the eye, all of a sudden they're like, whoa, let me show everyone else. Here's how we come through.
Yeah.
And that is not to say anyone's greater than or lesser than. It's just we all take turns in passing the baton. This is a marathon, and it's also a relay race. I was like, what's it called? It's a relay. We get to help each other. Today I lean on you guys to lead. Tomorrow you lean on someone else to lead, and we collectively support each other through this time.
Yeah. And that's why, you know, we need each other so deeply, right? Especially, I mean, it's highlighted and I think brought to the forefront in times like this, but we really do, because I was, you know, I've been hearing sort of some judgment and some criticism about the people who are not honoring the request to stay home. And initially my mind goes, yeah, that's really messed up. Why wouldn't they stay home? And then my spirit comes through, right? And says, Katie, you invested over 10 years, thousands of dollars, and more than a handful of different life coaches and workshops and retreats and all of this stuff to learn how to be with yourself. Actually learn how to enjoy being in your own skin, being in your own body, working through your trauma, right? That's not an easy thing. And I want to make sure that we presence that staying at home sounds like this, oh, it's easy, just sit on the couch and stay home. But all of us know on this call, because we have been in the work, that as soon as you sit down and you get silent, everything that's been, you know, waving a flag internally says, oh, it's time for me to come forward. You know, it's time for me to march forward. And you need to look at me now, and you need to feel me now, and you need to honor me now, and you need to work through me now. And these are traumas, these are memories, these are relationship things, these are all the stuff comes to the surface. And so, you know, I just really want to put that into some context for everybody who's listening, to like have some grace for yourself. Grace for yourself. Have some compassion for everyone that's going through this process, that literally, like, there are generations sort of below us that don't know life without a screen. You know, they don't know life this still, this slow pace, this, you know, present. And so having compassion for them, because these are new muscles for them. And for those of us that have been sort of running from our traumas, or, you know, dodging the inner work, right? Having grace and some compassion for ourselves too, because this is the time when I feel like God, spirit, source, whatever you believe in, I feel like that force literally said, sit down and check yourself. Check your inner temperature. How are you doing? What do you need? And what do you need to let go of? And what do you need to say yes to and bring more of into your life?
So
I agree.
So good. Brother, I want to ask you, because this is everyone listening, this is the first conversation that Sanyika and I have ever had. So, I mean, tell me, where'd you grow up, and tell me your life, brother. I mean, where are you from?
I'm originally from Washington, D.C.
Wow.
I'm the youngest of 4 kids. My mom's baby, but God punished everybody else in my family and made me bigger than them. So, you know, I tell people, so, you know, the majority of my life I spend coaching executives and leaders, and helping people to step into literally their power in a way that is non-negotiable and all in, right? So basically, I'm a keynote speaker and a storyteller. So I teach storytelling, leadership, communication, that kind of thing.
Awesome.
And, you know, so what's really fascinating about this, as I'm listening to Katie talk about, like, having compassion.
Right.
So my personal belief is that the most common form of trauma is I mean, we're conscientious of things like car accidents and knife wounds and stuff like that, attacks. But the most common form of trauma is disappointment from unmet expectations. And it's like when you pull the rug out from underneath people in terms of what they were expecting, right? The expectation of going to the office, going to the school, going to the gym, going to this store, and now that expectation is no longer present. Then the question then becomes, well, how, like she was saying, how can I be with myself in this moment where my expectations are not being met? Right? And then that becomes a sort of a top line, because underneath the surface, the real question is how are your expectations not being met in every aspect of your life? Right? So, for me, as I was looking at the way that I was responding initially, I mean, I immediately went into sort of one of my conditioned tendencies, which is like fight. It's like, this is a situation, like fight, warrior, all that kind of stuff. And I felt myself being judgmental of other people's fear. And so I was like, we can only create from the consciousness that we possess, right? So if I am judging someone's fear, then maybe I'm not being honest with my own fear at the same rate. Right? So I was like, okay, well, maybe in this moment, I think the best thing to do would just to be to check in with myself. And I did have a sense of fear, and I still do, and the idea is okay, well, in that moment, I was like, well, let me step out of this full masculine form and into a more empathetic and loving form. And then at that point, it was really powerful, because I made a post on Facebook. I said, I'm praying for you.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then I was like, how can I go all in on this? So I edited it and I said, if you leave a heart in the comments, then I'll send you a recorded, customized prayer, right? How many people do you think left a heart in the comments?
Very few.
Over 100 people.
Whoa! That's good. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I literally sent over 100.
Wow.
And listen, I ain't no theologist. I ain't no preacher. I'm not a shaman or a medicine man or any of that other kind of stuff.
He has a gift, though. He has a gift for praying and channeling the divine and really intuiting what people most need to hear in the moment. It's really beautiful, because I was in the behind the scenes in the process, and he was up and late nights and recording these voice notes for each person, and I would watch him check in and feel into where they were at and really trust his channel. And this is a really beautiful process to witness.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
brother, I want to acknowledge you. I saw you first through Katie, because Katie and I were connected. I saw you enter her life, and I was watching, and your grounded strength is tremendous. Tremendous, brother. And I just acknowledge you for that. I love it. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm a big brother here. Let's go, let's roll on this. And that's beautiful that you got to share that with more than 100 people. That's
I'm grateful for that reflection, man. It was and speaking into what Katie was talking about, and I appreciate that, babe, like the process of trusting your intuition, especially in these moments, becomes a really profound gift. Talk about like the absence, there is no such thing as fearlessness.
That's
fear,
right.
Fear is a divine gift.
It comes factory installed.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Like, you can't do any modification.
Stock. Yeah, exactly. It's stock.
Right. And the cool thing about fear is that fear keeps your stupid ass from running in the middle of a busy intersection.
That's right. That's right.
From jumping off of a cliff or a building thinking that you can fly. Right. So it actually is there for a purpose, to protect to protect us.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it might prevent you from accomplishing your greatest objective. And so, like my belief is that the idea is not necessarily getting rid of fear. It's the ability to dance with it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's moving in unison with it, so that you know when your intuition needs to take over and the fear is rightfully keeping you at bay.
Brother, that is so good. Okay. So I'm so glad we're talking about this. There was a time my wife and I went to this weekend workshop, and she said to me, she goes, your words of affirmation, you say your love language is words of affirmation, but I feel like you're a bathtub with the drain open, that I can't fill you enough. And so it makes me feel like not enough. And I will never forget looking at her, listening to her, and realizing the greatest act of love I could give her is to receive her love. And the word love in Hebrew is ahava, which means to give. So my giving her love is actually receiving her love. So it's I would say weird dichotomy in that the giving is the receiving and the receiving is the giving. And then I study with, for 4 years, every single week, I study with one of my really good friends, a Hasidic rabbi here in Seattle. And I asked him when we first started studying, because growing up in Christianity, I heard the verse, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But then in Christianity, they say, but it's not fear, it's awe, it's reverence, it's all these words. I'm like, I just want clarity in life. Like, I'm already confused in my home life. There's already so much going on. Just give me clarity. Like, does this mean what it says it means? And no one gave me a clear answer. Then I was studying with the rabbi, and he said, no, it actually means fear. It means to be fearful. But then I'm like, man, this doesn't align yet. I'm not sure yet what it means. It's the beginning of wisdom. And so at that workshop, I realized for the very first time, God is love, and he gives. The greatest act of love I can give him, to show him, to give him, is to give him my fear. When I give him my fear, I can then create space to receive his love. So the greatest act of love I can give God is to receive his love. And this is what blew me away. God does not call us to be fearless. God calls us to be courageous, which means to acknowledge fear and step through it anyway. And that, I got chills right now. Like, when I realize that God, the universe, source, life, love, light, does not call us to be fearless, but calls us to have courage to say, in your fear, keep stepping. Oh man, that like changed everything for me. Everything. So I love that you're saying you still have fear. It's beautiful. That truth makes us free. It's not that we're not to have fear.
And the only way,
Agreed.
the function of fear, right, and it much like what Sanyika just said, is to keep you from running into the middle of the street, jumping up that building, touching the fire, right? But also, the number one way to mitigate fear when it shows up in our system, especially now in 2020, where there doesn't need to be a life-threatening situation happening in our immediate reality for us to feel the fear, the only way to walk through that fear is to get present. Is to presence ourselves so deeply into what's here now. I was talking to a girlfriend yesterday, and her father's a pilot, and she said in the pilot training, when an engine blows on the plane, most pilots want to start pulling levers, right, and trying to balance the plane and get it to ground and all of that. But they actually train the pilots to pause and say out loud, "The engine has blown," so that they can be present, right, with the circumstance that's here, and their fear doesn't go riding off into the sunset with the levers and their panic. And so I love that you bring in this conversation about God calls us to be courageous and leverages fear to presence us, so that we can receive, so that we can say, oh, I feel fear in my system right now, and the sun is still shining, and my heart is still beating, and I still have a roof over my head. and I still have my breath, and I still have my kids, and and like really presents us to like, I'm feeling this, and this is what the reality is right now. Safe, fed, hydrated, loved.
Yeah.
So good. It's so good. Katie, you taught me this just to be grounded. You shared an exercise with me about laying on the ground and kicking stuff out of my body. And there's something about touching the ground. If people can't get outside right now because they live in an apartment or whatever, and they're stuck in, a high rise, just touching the floor, the fabric, all that is comes from all that is. We come from the same material that this phone is made from. It's just the molecules decided to form into this, and we happen to form into what we are. But we can get grounded. I don't want to sound too wild, but we can get grounded in whatever we're in. This chair, our couch, the carpet, to feel the ground, to feel what is in the moment, and to be present in that. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Speaking into that, you want to just take a deep breath to just get grounded?
Yeah, brother, let's do it.
Oh, man. Let's do it. Let's just close our eyes for a moment. And anybody that is listening, you can join in.
Unless you're driving.
Unless you're driving.
Don't close your eyes.
We'll just take a few deep breaths. This is the way that I start every coaching call that I do. Actually, or this with Breath of Fire, but we won't do Breath of Fire right now. But just a few, we're going to inhale, exhale, inhale, hold at the top, and then exhale on the count of 3, and then repeat 2 more times. 1, 2, 3. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Even bigger on this one. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Even bigger on this one. Inhale. Hold. Take in more air. Exhale. Breathe it all out. Just come back when you're ready.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I'm constantly reminded by Katie and other facilitators about how infrequently we intentionally breathe, right? Especially when you're going through, again, an anxiety-induced shutdown, right? So the breath of fire has been really powerful because that's the Kundalini one.
Practice.
So
in and out short.
Yeah, short breath through your nose, mouth closed. Call it the ego crusher, because it shuts down all of the stuff happening up here in head and gets you literally into a space where all you got is like your presence, So that, it's like a lot of times, the tactical response to a situation is X's and O's. It's on paper. It's like, okay, the first thing I need to do is I need to do this thing, call this person, do this thing. But people forget that, that everything, life is not simply an intellectual process, it's a physical process, right? And so if your physically is not in tune with the thought process, then implementation is impossible. Right. So the idea is like, so it's the same kind of thing from somebody who's walked through something,
Yeah.
Somebody, you can tell in their vibration, you can see it because they physically moved through it.
Yeah.
Right? And so the idea is that we get into these intellectual thought processes because we're just living up here and we're not in here. So the breathing is the connection point from here to here so that we can extend that out into the universe.
That's powerful. Powerful.
Yeah.
Man. It was a powerful realization for me too, because I was a very heady kind of guy, right? super smart, but like Cat Williams says, smarter than a dumb motherfucker. Like just like just super smart about everything, right? Super smart, super intelligent. And then when you get down to it, it's like, then you start realizing that 97% of people that buy online courses don't finish them. Right? And you're like, oh, okay, well, why? And it's like, because you have the intellectual thought process around what you feel like you need to do. But the thing is that you're not physically connected to it. You're not aligned. You haven't checked in with you, right? You haven't done that process of being with yourself. So when you get the X's and O's, it doesn't resonate. It doesn't compute. Your body is saying no, right? It's like like the song, my mind's telling me, what I'm saying? my body. No.
That's a different podcast. No, but I dig it, because even right now I feel in here in my body more. Just that simple breathing of doing 3 breath holds. I feel more grounded. And that's a good reminder.
Yeah.
And the chakra system, Katie was the first one to teach me about the chakra system and that root chakra, getting grounded, like getting from, because I was coming from the world and life that I grew up in. I could disassociate, I could be gone, and what would happen to me happened to this body, but I was out of my body. And most of the time I was watching my body. And so it has taken me, actually, Katie was the first to it's okay to be in your body and then go down and get grounded and work through the chakras. Okay, I'm here on this earth.
Yeah.
And I just did this, people listening, I don't know what people are thinking. I've done a lot of things. Okay. So, I've been a pastor, I've run a ministry of Judaism, all these things, spirituality. I love God. That is the primary thing in my life. But I just did this angel healing session that a friend of mine told me to, and they do soul fragment implementation, and they used the I Ching, and it was so spot on. It was incredible. And they said these people channeled angels, and they were so spot on. The guy goes, "What happened to you at 21 years old? I see that you have massive trauma, and you broke something off." I said, "Well, I attempted suicide at the age of 20. He goes, "Okay, we're seeing that." And they're saying they want you to know through this integration, they want you to know that you've had 1 foot off this earth and 1 foot in this earth, and you get to decide right now to have both feet in. And this was in January, and then all of a sudden all this stuff happens, and I'm like, wow, all right, I'm here. We're here. We're talking. I'm looking at you. I'm listening to you. This is powerful. And I only bring that up is to get grounded in, to plant firmly and say, we're here.
Yeah. That's all in, dude. That's all in.
Yeah.
And I just, so like this, I love that, because one of the other things that Dr. Joe talks about is about the frequency of gratitude, right? And the utter importance of the idea that being grateful in the moment, right? So I believe that we live in that. A lot of people, this past, present, and the future. My personal belief is that we don't live in the past or the present or just the future, right? We live in the future now.
That's cool.
Right? And so the idea is that we have an eye for the future that we want to create, and that creates, reverse engineers the action steps that you take now towards that future, right?
Yeah.
And so in that spirit, in that space, what he says is that ultimately the Ferrari that you want to purchase in the future it's not about the thing, it's about the relationship with the thing. And the relationship with the thing is the emotional connection to it. So that's actually the end result, is the emotion, is that as a result of getting the Ferrari or the house or the thing, I'm going to feel like X, right? That's the future. So the idea is can I take that emotion from the future and bring it all the way back to right now?
That's so cool.
And live in that emotion. Right. And the idea is that when you live in that emotion, the gratitude for that emotion or what's to come, it creates emotional space for you to just move towards the thing that you want to achieve. I mean, he doesn't necessarily put it in those terms, but that's the way that I perceive it.
Yeah, that's powerful. I would say, because I've heard him talk, I think that's a really clear way to say it. And that's powerful. The now, the future, what'd you say? The
future now. We live in the future now.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And at the same rate, it's become very present to me that many people have an adverse relationship with the future. They do not know what their future. They don't know what they want their future to be. They have an adverse relationship with setting goals. You say goals to somebody, they will curse you out.
Where do you think that comes from?
Well, you think about your definition of trauma,
right,
which is an unmet expectation.
Right.
And you ask people about their goal setting process, and they will tell you, I have set goals in the past, but they didn't come to be. So I don't set goals anymore. It's literally been wired as a trauma. And if we don't learn to cultivate our characteristics of commitment and follow through and really the characteristics of the internal healthy masculine, then we will have an adversarial relationship with the future because it is just a sea of potential unmet expectations.
That's so good.
Especially if we don't trust ourselves, we don't believe in ourselves, we don't have, for me, it's my faith. Like my faith has to be forefront number one.
Absolutely.
Because that is where I source my safety, my security, my certainty is in my faith, my relationship with the powers that be. The word I use is God, but my relationship with God is first and foremost because that's where I source that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If we're going back to psychology, that bottom line of that pyramid is number one, people need to feel safe, secure, and have a level of certainty. And you can't have too much certainty because once you have too much certainty, then it's boring. Life becomes boring. We're human, so we need a bit of risk in there. But there's this threshold of certainty that needs to be met in order for us to allow our nervous system to settle back into the parasympathetic nervous system and then move forward in a way that's grounded and present and all of that. However, most people have had very traumatic, right, unmet experiences with goals and goal setting and saying, I'm going to do this, and then registering their quote unquote failure as a stop sign rather than a applause that you're actually on the path of moving towards what you said you're going to move towards. Right? So it's this really interesting dance within people and their psyche and their process is like, can you forgive yourself for everything that you've walked through up until this point? And my belief is that you actually can't step in a healthy relationship with yourself or other people unless you have worked and built your muscle of forgiveness. And then once you've forgiven yourself and continue to practice that, because things will come up, as a parent, things will come up during the day that you get to forgive yourself for, partnership will come up that you get to forgive yourself for. So that's a practice. And then once you've forgiven yourself, can you then say, okay, now what would I give myself the opportunity to desire or to move towards if I trusted myself just as much as God trusts me?
So good.
And that's where the goals can have the opportunity to come in, or that vision for the future can have the opportunity to come in. Because we know, as the three of us here are visionaries. We've had visions and ideas that have come through, and we receive them and we go, oh shoot, that that moment of like, wait, me? Are you sure that was meant for me? Because I'm sitting here on my yellow couch in my living room and I don't know how I'm going to get up there, right?
Right.
Because both of you without knowing this, have a vision in Madison Square Garden.
Wow. Awesome.
And right, and you go, but I'm here, I'm recording a podcast, and you're showing me Madison Square Garden. Wait, you know, like, what is that? And that's where, again, we go back to faith first, because we won't know. But our human need for certainty is going to say, well, how, and why, and those two questions are irrelevant. They're the most disempowering questions we can ask ourselves. What we need to know is, am I committed? Am I all in?
Yeah.
And am I willing to listen for the next step and then take it? That's so and that's the process, right? And we see these people online, especially in the online world, where we're like, oh my gosh, she did it or he did it, and they have a 3-step process, and it's this 1, 2, 3, and boom, there's your business, or boom, there's your vision. And him and I were just talking about this last night, and I'm like, that's all marketing.
Yes.
Anytime that we decide we are going to take the journey of bringing our vision to fruition, it is a free fall. And the whole way down, we're just praying that before we hit ground, wings,
that's right.
Wings come through. And they do, so long as we can relax during the free fall, which is the most counterintuitive thing to do as a human. But that's the process. And I hope that somebody listening really lets that land for them, because we can be in this really deep self-judgment and self-criticism within ourselves as to why we haven't, quote unquote, gotten there yet, or been able to do this yet, or accomplish that yet. And it's like, take a breath and realize that the fact that you are en route to that you've said yes to the adventure and the journey is reason enough to celebrate. Because so many people, right, won't. They'll intellectualize from the neck up and say, I could do that if I want to. I could do this if I want to. But there's a huge difference between saying I could do it if I want to and saying I am willing to do it and then taking those steps.
Oh, man.
Huge difference.
Huge. I wanted to share a quick story in regards to that. I had a coaching call with an executive that's been very drastically in slow, steady decline, from making almost $200,000 a year to now having about 2 weeks worth of money in the bank account for food. And so the question was, that I posed was, we went through this process, and so we started having a conversation about core wounds, right, and about his core wounds from childhood, and how that manifested itself, and then he brought up a story about how he was surrounded by 8 to 10 kids, and they were bullying him and pushing him in the circle. And then as they were pushing him in the circle, they also brought over a girl that he liked so that she could be witness to it. Right. And in that moment, I asked him, I said, how could that situation have come to a halt? Like what could have ended that situation? And all of his responses were like, well, what if I believed in myself, or if I swung and I hit the big kid, or if I had a sword or a gun, or I had something like that. And if I had all this, if I had a weapon, or if I felt more powerful, if I felt more this, and just
externally referenced
exactly
stuff
right.
out here.
Right. And then the one thing that he never said was ask for help. And that situation manifested in his present moment by being surrounded by a circumstance that he can't get himself out of on his own. And he doesn't want to ask for help. Right? Wow. Almost 35 years later, right? Every solution is me. I need to fight my way out. And it's like, are you willing and open to ask for help? But the disappointment factor was like, I don't feel like adults come when I request them, when I ask for help.
Yeah.
And that was like, yeah, these are real things that we're all working through.
This is the human stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the human stuff right now.
Yeah.
That's brother, thanks for sharing that. Everyone listen, I want to bring clarity to that. Katie, previously to doing her coaching, was a psychotherapist, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was limiting. You weren't able to really feel the holistic side. And then hearing you both talk, and the dance and the beauty and the energy, the truth for all of us is we get to just relax into us. Just my greatest fear, Sanyika, this is in January, I had this meeting. I was trying to start this nonprofit, and I had big name people on the board and this, and it just, something was off. And I called a gal, a friend of mine, and she said, you need to ask for help. And I said, I don't want to ask for help. I started crying. I'm like, I'm in this meeting with these two other business leaders, and I'm on the phone with her, and she's like, I started crying. They're like, they stepped out, and I didn't know I didn't feel emotional. I wasn't in a soft space, but her telling me I need to ask for help made me cry, because when I was in 5th grade, my mom grabbed me and said, we need to pray for food, because of the circumstances in my home, the food was cut off. And so I remember being in 5th grade on my knees on the couch with my mom praying for food. And the next day, a grocery bag of produce was left on our front door in a old paper bag with no handles, just old school, like brown paper bag. And I've never forgotten that miracle. My mom to this day doesn't know who dropped that off. I have no idea who dropped that off. And as cool as that is, what that taught me is when I have to ask, it's a life and death. Like, I was scared for my life.
It has to be justified.
Yeah, I was truly. And if I have to ask for help, does this mean I'm at the brink of, like, I'm going to be killed, or I'm going to die, or I'm going to starve?
Wow.
And that's where all those tears started. I was scared. Like, I could get emotional right now. I'm not even trying to. I'm saying that I understand what that guy, and the greatest act of love we can give is to receive someone's love. So how can I receive someone's love if I don't ask them to show me love?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you talked about that workshop that you went to about receiving love, that was a really powerful visualization. And Katie and I had that interaction when we first got together, because I had very much the same issue. So I would reject, and I wasn't. And again, the process of learning to be present with yourself is a real process. So I acknowledge you for that, and for obviously like what you just shared about asking for help, because it relates into all of that. It relates into all of that, and as at this stage in the game, in terms of what many people are navigating through, the difficulty in being present with themselves, the difficulty in even being able to tap into the frequency of gratitude in the present moment, even though there are absolutely concerns, right?
Yeah.
And obviously we're very empathetic to that, but many people's physical environment hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's like how do we navigate through this without just being in the hysteria of it?
Right.
And that being present with yourself becomes a powerful first step. And then getting grounded and then asking for help become powerful components to be able to start to pull the pieces back together.
And there's this like perspective that just keeps tapping me on my shoulder as I'm listening to both of you dialogue and share so vulnerably and beautifully. So thank you for that, because these are authentic, real life, vulnerable, heart-centered shares and experiences. And what comes through for me is like this this awareness that like I was put here by God to learn about me and to experience myself and to experience who is Katie when she decides she's going to be a mom? Who is Katie become when she decides she's going to step into partnership? Who does Katie become when she decides she's going to build a business? Who does Katie become when the business doesn't go the way that she wants it to go? You know, who does Katie become when she experiences the death of a loved one or the coronavirus or what? Who do I become, right? And this asking this question of like, who do I become and how do I show up when, often drops me into a place of curiosity and immediately creates so much space, because now I'm in a place of wonder and possibility versus criticism and judgment, you know, of like, well, that's not Katie. That's not what Katie would do. And it's like, well, wait, we don't know. We don't know yet. Let's see. Let's find out. What would she do? You know, or who does Sanyika become when he feels anxious and stressed and scared, right? Yeah. Who does he become when he feels enlivened and empowered and in joy? Like this curiosity just creates so much space for us to really flex our muscles. And, you know, it reminds me of like getting on a yoga mat, which is not one of my favorite things to do, but getting on a yoga mat and going, I wonder what happens when I pull my leg up here, you know, when I bend my back this way, or, you know, and so just giving ourselves that space of possibility and wonder and curiosity and just openness to like, you know, I wonder, and especially because I feel like deep down during this period of time, people are not, the people who walked into this experience are not going to be the same people who walked out of this experience. Right. And we know, given our own life experiences, that the identity shift that occurs when we start to do the inner work, when we start to peel back the layers of trauma and wounding, is that identity shift comes with a lot of grief. Yeah. You know, it comes with a lot of grief. It comes with a lot of emotion. And I want to make sure that I presence that for anybody listening, because, you know, very few people, especially in the online space, are going to tell you how much loss there is in transformation. And it's not loss from a space of like you're losing everything. It's actually how much is cleared in transformation, how much we've been hanging on to that's no longer for us. It's no longer meant to be in our lives. And really evolving into that, who am I? Who am I becoming? Right? And it is this caterpillar to butterfly sort of cycle that happens over and over and over again. Yes. You know, and really being with, it's okay to cry. You know, it's okay to feel sad that you don't recognize the woman or man that you were a month ago. That's okay. And it's okay to be in this middle sort of void point where you're like, I know I'm not that person anymore, but I also don't know who the heck I'm gonna be. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm in this middle space where it's uncomfortable and I feel squishy and I feel like I don't know which way is up and which way is down and left and right. And I can't hear God or spirit right now. And I just feel like I'm walking blind in the dark, just listening and trying to trust and keep my breath. And that's the most important part of the journey, right? Yeah. It's like, that's that point where you go, I surrender.
Yes.
I surrender.
Oh man. I can't wait to meet. We've never met in person. I can't wait to hug you guys, both of you.
Agreed, man.
One thing that I've learned this past year in 2019 is, you know, you talked about forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And growing up in Christianity, you hear the word forgive like it's, you hear the word breakfast. I mean, it's like synonymous with just what it is. And like, oh, forgive. Yeah. And I became, I had visceral reactions to that narrative, because what that, in that context, and I want to clarify for everyone listening, the forgiveness, what Katie's talking about, and the forgiveness that usually is spoken of is a weapon to protect the abuser against the abused. It's asking the abused, the victimized,
Yeah.
Do you accept what the victimizer did?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't,
Mm-hmm.
God won't forgive you. You're not going to heaven. You're not going to have peace. You're not. And they shame the shit out of victims. And victims are left with like, okay. And then that trauma gets settled in and buried in.
Yeah.
However, love means to give, hava in Hebrew. The word love, anytime in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, which is not old to them, it's just the Bible to the Jewish community, is the word ahava. And the word love in Hebrew is ahava, which means to give. Love always gives the highest good, always. And forgive, like foreknowledge, foretold, it is to love as if it never happened. Give. Love as if it's never happened. And right now, we need not so much to worry about what was done to us, so much as are we loving ourselves as if that never happened to that executive? Are you loving that little 7-year-old or 5-year-old or 11-year-old boy who didn't ask for help? Are you just loving him as if it never happened because it never happened in the now moment, the future now, you know?
Right.
This is the forgiveness that the world gets to wake up to, is that we get to love as if it never happened. And then acknowledge whatever's left, we get to release.
I have 2 points on that I'd like to share. That I love this that presencing about love and giving it up. I was talking to my friend Sam the other day. Known him since I was in high school, and he's a therapist, and he deals with parole and probation, and people with very, very deep wounds. And so he said forgiveness is not the idea of forgiving the person, right? So what you're doing is you're forgiving the memory. And I was like,
that's good.
I was like, that's wild. And so, so he's like, you're forgiving the memory of it, right? The memory is what you're letting go. And the relationship to the memory, the shame and the guilt to the memory. So one of the things that I talk about a lot is about the idea. So when I talk about the idea of like radical responsibility, like taking ownership for your life, and there's a really, really important component that I include with my version of radical responsibility. It is without critical self-judgment or the judgment of others. It's like, because if I could take ownership of my life, because the very first thing that people talk about when they say taking ownership of my life, oh yeah, my life, it's my fault. There's no fault.
That's right.
There's no fault. It's just a life, right? And so if there's no fault, really, there's no fault. For people who are listening, yeah, there's no fault. Yeah, there's no fault. By the way, there's no fault. The idea is that if you have the ability to the mastery in this process, and this is obviously what we're navigating through, is how do I get to the point where I can move the energetic charge from every situation, forgive the memory, remove the shame, remove the guilt, and look at it as something to be able to assess, so I can, in service of me moving forward to the future that I want to create. Because the only thing that is going to prevent is you from getting to where you want to be, right? I was blaming my father for everything. Somebody, the greatest lesson my father taught me the other day, I said forgiveness, right? And it wasn't because he taught it to me explicitly. It was because I learned that I was prohibiting myself from moving to where it was that I want to be. And the other part about it is that he was also going through his process, his own human process, the same way my client went through his human process. And I said, if the generational cycle was that I thought my father was supposed to save me, and it was actually an assignment for me to save him, right? So what if that was the relationship? And am I open to that paradigm shift, And so I'm like, and then if I can remove that shame and that guilt, I can move forward, So that's the space that we all have the opportunity to step into.
And I would love to presence too, because I 100% all of that. I mean, what you said, Lucas, what you said, Sanyika, like about forgiveness and just how powerful it is. And also one of the reasons I used to be able to hold a grudge like nobody's business. You know what I mean? Like it just, that was my nature, was to like, oh, you crossed me? Okay, you're going to regret that. You know, like just this anger, right? And part of why I had such difficulty forgiving is because, right, I grew up in the Catholic Church where forgive, like you said, Lucas, forgive. And it was like forgiveness was supposed to be just this easy thing.
Yes.
And I struggled so deeply with it. And I'm like, why do I struggle to I have my angers and my frustrations and you know, those aspects of myself, but I also am a kind-hearted, loving person. And why is it so difficult for me to let this go and say I forgive you? And it was because what is not brought into the context often in forgiveness is how vulnerable it is and how intimate it is. Because the moment that we acknowledge that we need to forgive is also the moment that we acknowledge that we've been hurt. That hurt. You hurt me, right? My heart is hurt. My spirit is hurt. I feel powerless. I felt powerless in that memory. I didn't know how to handle. I faced off with my insecurities. I had all of these hopes and dreams, and they just disintegrated because of decisions that you've made, right? Like just how vulnerable. It's like opening up. I mean, even in my body, I feel it right now. It's like opening up your chest cavity and just saying, here it is, you know? I feel hurt, and I feel disempowered, and I feel victimized, and I feel inadequate, and I feel not good enough. And that's the core wound, right? Is like not good enough. And so it's like, wait, hold on. You want me to forgive this person that just hurt me, and in doing so, you want me to open up vulnerably and acknowledge this pain that's here. How scary. And for me, initially, I was like, absolutely not.
Say it. Oh, hell no. That's right. Yeah.
And then I realized, right, that like the lesson for me in that is that I was holding this belief that my pain would overtake me. That my pain was stronger than me, that my wounding was stronger than me, and that if I opened up that closet, right, that the monsters that came out would just swallow me whole. And really, what I learned when I began to practice forgiveness and when I softened and said, okay, I'll give it a try, is that those there weren't monsters in that closet. They were literally like ghosts of my former self, just asking to be loved and asking to be acknowledged. And it was like it was like my ability to embrace them was me like taking my power back. Was me and my 8-year-old self going, you know, I love you and I got you. And then at 15, I love you and I got you. And then at 22, I love you and I got you, you know, and just bringing these sort of fractured aspects of myself that had been hurt, harmed, or endangered or victimized, and just bringing them back into my being and saying, I got you. We're not there anymore. And we can forgive this person, and we can let that go, and we can erase that memory and take from it what we need to for our spirit, but release anything that is no longer in service to who we are today and who we're becoming today.
That's beautiful.
Oh, guys, I love you both. Thank you.
Love you,
brother. I know you're big. You're 6'7", or I know 6'6",
6'8".
Bro, 6'8".
Yeah.
When you and I embrace someday, it's gonna be a Victor skill moment. It's gonna be glorious.
It's like I'm kind of selfish. I had a selfish moment when he told me, like, you guys had this set up. He was like, I'm going to set up a date with Lucas.
I'm so glad.
A moment where I was like, only because I want to be there for that moment when you two do embrace. Because I want to get it on camera. I feel like it's two
big guys, yeah.
You know, just going to come together. Man.
And
it's just going to be this explosion, right? I won't be surprised if like confetti shows up. Like rain.
It is. It's going to be good. And everyone listening, the coronavirus can't, because of it, we were all supposed to meet in person, or, Katie, I know you had the workshop, but that canceled our plans and life has happened. But this thank you. Thank you both for being on. Thank you both for sharing. Thank you both for leading. And thank you both for leading with love. I love you both. And Sanyika, Katie knows, I mean, people, I don't need to qualify it, but I'm not jiving and I'm not messing around in life. And we got a clear mission and we're getting after it. And you guys, I feel better with you on this earth, even though I'm up here in Seattle and you guys are in LA. And I know after this episode airs, everyone that listens to it is going to feel better because you guys are on earth. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having us on. Thank you for this time and this deep dialogue. I love conversing with you, Lucas, because we just go deep.
We go deep.
In the deep water.
We just jump right in. And real quick, how can people find you both? Katie, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at The Queenmaker Live, or you can go to thequeenmaker.live to learn more about my programs and working with me and all of that. Yes. But Instagram's my favorite place to play right now.
Awesome. And brother, where can people find you?
People can find me at Firestarter Live, and you can go to firestarterlive.com as well.
That's at Firestarter Live on Instagram.
Yeah, on Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay. You can message me on Facebook, but and we're working on so one of the things that I do is I do storytelling campaigns with brands. The story of social movements. So I create customized spoken word pieces and all that, and then we film them as music videos and then put them out. So we're in the process of developing one in relation to be honoring people who are serving on the front lines, called Thank You for Your Service. So you can keep a lookout for that as well. And then just reach out to me on Instagram or anything like that. But I really appreciate, your love and your presence and your, just being open to having us, and we're really, really grateful for connecting.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother. Thank you. I love you guys. Thank you.
Love you, brother.
Everyone, thank you so much for listening today. These two beautiful souls are a gift to this world, and I'm honored that we all got to share and listen to them. If you are struggling right now, just hear me. You are going to be okay, no matter what. If you get sick, if you pass away, if you live, you're going to be okay. Life is good. And this is just part of what Earth and human existence on Earth has gone through since the beginning of our time. And it's a great humbling around the world to know that when we ask for help, we get help. When we ask for love, we receive love. And to take the courageous step to acknowledge your fear so that you can experience the love of self that you've desperately craved. I'm with you. Sanyika and Katie are with you. You're not alone wherever you are, and I'm honored that you joined this episode. My name is Lucas Mack. This has been the Golden Rule Revolution, where inspiration and purpose come from treating people like people and nothing less. I'll talk to you on the next episode.